Welcome back to Cannes Lions Festival of Creativity. Brad Smith, Brian Sozzi, and now we're joined by the Chief Marketing Officer of Coca-Cola, Manolo Arroyo. Great to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. All right, well, first, you've got the Coca-Cola in your hand. I mean, you're too cool for school right now. You're staying ice cold out here as we're seeing the sun start to open up a little bit more. You talk about the reach of the consumer base and the number of people that play into that marketing function as influencers, too, whether direct or indirect, and one of those indirect ones has been Warren Buffett. You've also had indirect ones such as former presidents of the United States. So for better or worse, it's kind of going into a next or even amid a polarizing time right now where one influencer can be looked at or perceived differently than another. How does Coca-Cola manage its own brand perception despite who's talking about it?
I think the critical component is to have clarity of what you stand for. And it all starts by being extremely respectful to the heritage of what the brand has done in the past. This is one of the most, if not the most, inclusive brand in the planet. It stands for phenomenal human values such as optimism, happiness, freedom, peace. At the time in which the world needed peace, we claim, please, be in peace. And that got us to where we are. Now, if you stick into just the old territory, you won't be expanding the meaning that would make the relevance require, so to trigger transition or conversion from non-consumers into consumers. And that's where you need to craft very carefully how you're going to grow about it. We have identified a series of potential triggers of that conversion. For some humans are about consumption occasions. Why is that the case? While everyone understands that maybe why you should drink a Coke and what are the benefits as a product, a lot of times you don't understand where and when it's appropriate. You're missing the context. And that works for quite some people. An example of that is connecting Coca-Cola to meals, meals occasions. We're getting significant new incidents of new consumers coming into the franchise through association with meals. The second bucket is around passion points. We all have different passion points. And that's where topics like music, gaming, traveling, sports play a significant role in driving some of that conversion. For a portion of the population today, particularly Gen Z, in certain markets, ESG, your level of commitment on ESG, it matters. And for others, it's innovation. So we're playing with all of those different conversion drivers or factors that will ultimately allow us to accelerate what we're going after, which is basically growth. Right. The name of the game for us is growth.
This year, how much will you spend on marketing? How does that compare to next year? And then if this brand is in fact about optimism and peace, how are you thinking about your budget next year for election season when we might see an election that is anything but peaceful and optimistic?
Well, we don't disclose specifically our marketing budget, but as you can imagine, there's official sources out there, and you could think it's in the multi-billion-dollar magnitude. Now, bear in mind that one piece is what we invest in marketing, and then there's the other piece that is equally important, which is what our bottlers invest in marketing, which is a similar, roughly the same amount. So that gives you a tremendous marketing muscle. Factor in that not only the paid media, but what we define as owned media or earned media. And part of that is 30 million outlets, which we serve and we touch every single week of the year in every one of the countries that exist out there except 3. More than 10 million coolers in those 30 million outlets. Thousands and thousands of trucks that are moving, they're moving outdoor connection points that we're leveraging in our marketing. So the ecosystem of the engagement points that allow us to reach millions and millions of consumers is just phenomenal. Now, your question on the US. US represents, roughly speaking, I'm just going to round the number, around 15% of our business. And it's obviously, from a marketing perspective, important and very critical because it's extremely visible. And it's a market that we see tremendous growth potential, We're seeing in the last couple of years very interesting dynamics, not only in Coca-Cola trademark, but across the whole portfolio. We're seeing explosive growth in Fairlife, in Sprite, in hydration. So it's really off to a great start in the US. Now, next year, it'll be a very important year. As it relates to public or political potential controversy and how we play there is very simple answer. We don't play in that.
But do you want to see an ad for Coke products next to stories, for example, on a digital property regarding the election? How do you handle that?
No, obviously, from a brand safety standpoint, we have very, very clear guidelines. Very clear guidelines. We're going to stay away from any major controversy because there's a principle here. As I mentioned before, we are the most inclusive brand. This brand is for everyone. In our employees, we have not only our company employees, with our bottling employees, we reach close to 1 million employees around the world. So our diversity of opinions, from a political, sexual preference, ideology, you name it, it's as wide and as big as the population in any given country, including the US. And we welcome everyone. We've always welcomed everyone. Now, we can't avoid that people have their own opinion, and that's got to be respectful. Our employees do as well. But when it comes to our marketing communications, we are taking a position of inclusion. That's what we stand for. It's a value that transcends, in our view, what's out there, and it's more important because ultimately, what we're saying is we're a simple beverage, we're just a soft drink, and don't expect too much of a soft drink. Who are we, right? So just enjoy it, have fun, and enjoy the pleasure of it.
Well, one thing that people are having increasingly more fun with is some of your canned cocktails right now. We've seen a couple of those being passed around here, especially as people are getting saucy at canned this year. When you think about how much you would like to allocate towards that part of your growing business in either marketing spend or just consumption as a metric that you're tracking, what does success look like?
You mean in our latest experiments in the portfolio?
Yes.
We've been experimenting over the last, we started 3 years ago, actually. It's September 2020, actually. And we are very, very happy with the results of those experiments. We're still in the in the process of learning how the category plays. We see clear potential. We still are shaping the line of sight of how that could become potentially and how big it could become for us in our portfolio. We still are in the process of having those discussions internally and basically firming up our investment and our plans for the future. But we see it as a promising category because that's where the consumer is going. Mm-hmm. And whether you like it or not, and this is maybe unknown, if you go to the archives of our archives in Coca-Cola, there are materials that associate not only Coca-Cola, but some of the other brands, Sprite, for example, to different beverage options in those consumption occasions. So it's not something new. We've been doing some of that since.
So Sprite had alcohol at one point?
Not in the product itself, but communicating. For example, we got 1960s communication materials of a Sprite with vodka. And obviously, Cuba Libre, rum and Coke. It's been part, as you may have heard, of our legacy for decades. At different points of time, the levels of activation only in the outlets and only in the trade where it sells and is authorized to sell that have been having different degrees of execution depending on the country as well. But moving forward, we see, particularly maybe not in the whole world, but in certain markets, we see that the consumer is going there. The credentials and the credibility of our brands to play a role there, our rights to win, we define, are very clear.
Well, you'll be pleased to know that a rum and Coke is one of my go-to cocktails that is out there.
Why you like it?
Why do I like it?
Yeah.
Well, because it's the Coke. It's the Coke. It sets off the drink. It's great.
It's not because of the rum, it's because of the Coke.
It's because of the Coke.
That's the right answer.
Just say no
I
comment,
know,
bro.
My
I
boss
love
is
it.
listening. It's because of the Coke.
I love it.
Manolo Arroyo, who is the Chief Marketing Officer of Coca-Cola, joining us here at Cannes. We'll send it back to you.
All right, our thanks to Brad and Brian over at the Cannes Lions Festival in the south of France.